Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Good, and thank you so much for joining me. This week, we're going to be talking about something very specific, as we have been for a while now, kind of picking a movie or a game or something to focus on each week. And this week, we're talking about The Mask of Zorro. Now, for those who maybe haven't seen it, I would recommend going to watch it. There should be a commentary that's either out or is coming out that I've done alongside it. But if you've never seen it before, go watch it. It's on Netflix or you can rent it other places. Came out in 1998, which is kind of crazy to think about because like it came out over 20 years ago, which is kind of weird for me because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I remember watching it as a kid, like especially up like vacationing up in my cabin and stuff like with the family, and like I'm watching it on like the big old tube television screen. I'm like, oh man, it's been a long time, and now I'm watching it on the streaming service here. And it was actually voted on by our patrons to kind of talk about this one, especially for a commentary. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to kind of throw up, two random movies. And that one made the cut. And I just watched it recently, so I got to go back over and watch it again. So hopefully you can watch along with me. But if you haven't seen it before, please go check it out. But we're going to be talking about The Mask of Zorro today. So full-on plot, details, and story. So if you've never seen it and want to watch it, I recommend pausing this and coming back later. That would be great. Anyway, what is The Mask of Zorro? The Mask of Zorro. Oh my gosh. Okay, just first off, let me just say I really enjoy this movie. So if you hear a lot of that throughout this, that's why it's the underlying kind of theme here. But anyway, The Mask of Zorro. It stars Anthony Hopkins, Antonio Banderas, Captain Zeta-Jones. I think his name is Stuart Wilson, Matt Lencher. It's super good. I really enjoy this film. But basically, Anthony Hopkins, he is Zorro. He is the guy. Like if you guys aren't familiar with Zorro, Zorro is this masked vigilante back in history who kind of fought for the people of Mexico against tyrannical kind of forces and whatnot. And he would fight with a rapier. He had like a whip. He had his faithful steed Tornado. It's his big black horse. Really cool. And it was actually kind of the origin that kind of inspired Batman, not only for just like the comic itself, but that's classically the movie that Bruce Wayne and his parents were seeing the night his parents were killed. So Zorro, lots of inspiration here for Batman, and you can totally see that in this movie. And this movie, I would say, is a mix of what I like to tell people, the Count of Monte Cristo meets Batman Begins, in that it's a revenge story, kind of two of them put together with the kind of like superhero origin story, hero origin story. It's not really a superhero, but kind of. But we'll get into it. Anyway, Anthony Hopkins is Zorro, and you know what? He's been doing this for a long time. He's really good at it, but today, it's his last day. Unfortunately, his kind of sworn enemy, Don Raphael, who's played super duper well by Stuart Wilson, I'm pretty positive that's his name, comes in, finds him out, and a scuffle ensues, and unfortunately, Diego, who is Anthony Hopkins' character, his wife, Esperanza, dies. And Diego, for some odd reason, instead of being killed on the spot during all this type of thing, Don Raphael decides to take Diego's baby, Elena, who will eventually grow up to be Catherine Zeta-Jones, and sends him to prison. He's like, that's fine, not a problem. We jump 20 years to the future, and then we find out that actually Anthony Hopkins isn't dead. He's alive and well, and he's just been waiting for his moment to get his revenge on Don Raphael, and he's going to kill him. But he notices that when Raphael shows back in California, because he's been gone for 20 years, that he has Elena with him. And he's like, oh man, I can't kill this guy, outright. He's one of the only people who knows the truth, and he's been masquerading as Elena's real father for all these years. But that's not the only thing that's going on. The other main portion of the story is Antonio Banderas' character, this kid 20 years ago who helped Zorro out on his last day. So, Alejandro and his brother, they help Zorro out, and Zorro kind of thanks them, gives his necklace to his brother, and kind of both of them, he's like, thank you for saving me, guys. That's a big help, and kind of rushes off. Now we jump 20 years in the future. Alejandro and his brother are part of a gang, this kind of trio of criminals, and they're working with this guy named Jack, Fast Jack, and they're kind of pulling grifts on, various Mexican soldiers and whatnot. But unfortunately, after a very successful grift where they basically get everything they want from these kind of bumbling soldiers, they run into Captain Love, played by Matt Lencher, who is the other kind of main villain of the film. This American, just psycho. This guy is just super creepy, and you find out as the movie goes on, how much of a creep this guy is. But this guy ends up shooting Fast Jack. He almost kills Alejandro, he almost gets to him, but actually kills his brother instead. Or I should say his brother kills himself, and then Captain Love beheads him and takes that as a trophy, and leaving that necklace that Zorro gave to him many years ago on the ground. And that's where you find Alejandro's got that, and he's going to try to find Captain Love. So we've got Antonio Banderas and Anthony Hopkins, who hate these two guys so much. And eventually their paths cross at this little kind of cantina where Antonio Banderas, there's a lot of A's here, I'm so sorry. Alejandro is going to pawn off the real silver of this necklace for some more drink, because he's at the end of his rope. Anthony Hopkins' character, Diego, runs into him and he's like, hey, you know what, I'm going to teach you how to fight and stuff because you need to learn, and you helped me out a long time ago. So it kind of interweaves in a good way. It is a little hard to believe that like these two characters would run into each other 20 years later at just some cantina somewhere, but you know what? I'm going to forgive it, whatever. But then you get this kind of Batman Begins-esque, like, you know, they go back to the lair of Zorro that needs to be cleaned up. It's like kind of the Bat Cave, but it's basically the Zorro Cave, the cave that preceded Batman, so kind of inspired the Bat Cave. And he gets taught in all the ways and what it is to not only become physically Zorro, but also the symbol, the mentality of what Zorro is, which is this hero to the people. This movie's so good, and it holds up so well. Apparently, if I might be mistaken here, but it's like they said like maybe 80% of it is all practical, like, or almost all shot on location, as much as they could. Now, the cave, I'm pretty sure, probably isn't like a practical location, but I would love to be proven wrong. If that's a real place, I'd love to go there. But most of these places, like haciendas, these kind of fortress barracks and stuff, where they go in these kind of old villages, really great. And that's, again, stuff you see like that back in the past, where it's like, oh man, this is all really real and realistic, and it really feels authentic, and it's so good. And I think that's something that makes a movie much more timeless to me. And again, talking about it coming out over 20 years ago now, and it's still like you watch it today and be like, okay, this is still really good. It's not like they're trying to do anything with the technology at the time, trying to advance it, and then it gets outdated or outmoded in a couple of years. It's like, nope, all this stuff, realistic, just for the most part, straightforward, really good. And this movie is an action-adventure movie. A lot of the stuff I kind of found in my research is that they looked very closely at Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm not sure if that's true. I hope it is. But that would make sense why I resonates with me so much. And that's, kind of this fun, like there's a lot of adventure there insofar as like they're kind of figuring out who Zorro is and kind of who he's going to be in this place, but kind of doing these crazy like little misadventures within the adventure to show off his prowess and kind of to build him up over time. But also, there's a lot of comedy in here. And while I was watching the movie during the commentary, there's a lot of moments where I was like saying, oh, there's this really good dynamic of it being, here's like a very serious moment, and then it's punctuated eventually in another scene by a comedic moment. It's not like in some other films where it's like a comedy where they just undercut every serious moment with a joke. This one is very like, here's something serious, and then maybe in a couple minutes you get something kind of funny, and then it's like back and forth, back and forth. Excellent. So good. Because the movie, it is fun. It's a really good time, but also there are two revenge stories going on, and those need to be serious. You can't just have them be jokes. This needs to be like at the heart of the film. And I think it's done so well because you have these incredibly talented actors, especially with Anthony Hopkins and Antonio Banderas, just putting them in a room together, just watching them talk. It's just like, they're so good. They play it so well. And I love watching that. And even though their relationship doesn't necessarily get to a point where they're kind of super chummy with each other, there is eventually a respect between the two of them. And you have to remember, it's kind of like if you met or you saw like your superhero as a kid, and then 20 years later, that superhero was training you. Like, that would be so insane. And it's so wonderful just to see that relationship build over time. And then the addition of Elena in there too, where you have Diego, Anthony Hopkins, kind of saying like, oh, she needs to find out the truth. But I see that, as we're kind of trying to get closer and closer to the villains, kind of sneaking our way into their lives by me playing, the servant to Alejandro, and Alejandro kind of falling in love with Elena throughout that adds another element. And I would think a lot of times I don't know if it'd be more nowadays, or maybe it is an antiquated notion, but like having the father be more protective and be like, oh no, like you can be on a revenge trip, but you stay away from my daughter. Like he doesn't have that. He's very excited. He's like, oh, you know what? I would like her to be with somebody like this guy, as opposed to the antithesis of him, who is good old Captain Love, the American psycho over there. And basically, for the villain side of it all, that's kind of the heroes, like what they're kind of trying to do. But the villains, on the other hand, their kind of whole goal is to take, like secretly somehow, I don't know how they are going to manage to do this with this gigantic mine, but they're going to take gold from Santa Ana, kind of like the head honcho in that region of the world who's fighting the United States right now. They're going to take gold secretly from him, put the Spanish like labels on it, and then use that to buy portions, like buy California from the guy. So the main bad guy, Don Rafael, and his posse of other Dons, are these kind of like almost like regional warlords, can have their own place without having to fight Santa Ana, because Santa Ana and his army are super crazy. So they're worried about all that. And it's funny because you have Alejandro and Diego who don't care about that at all. They just want to kill these guys. Like that's all they want. Like they're not trying to foil those plans until later on. And you kind of get that with Alejandro, where he sees the mine because they've been taking people against their will and basically taking them and forcing them into slave labor. And it's such a cool way to see the transformation of Alejandro on a physical level, because he comes off as a street rat in the beginning. They turn him into a nobleman to infiltrate the Dons, but still inside, he's still one of the people. And that really shakes him when he finally sees this creepy mine and unfortunately sees Fast Jack, the guy who used to run in his gang with him, who becomes Three-Fingered Jack because he's lost a couple of fingers, sees him and sees him die by Captain Love's hand. And it's so good. It's just, it calls back to things. And there's this, like, Captain Love is just excited about the fact that he's gotten to shoot this guy, Fast Jack, out of the air twice. And that's just all he's about. And then that leads into the confrontation later on between Captain Love and Alejandro, because you have Alejandro, this nobleman who kind of came out of nowhere, but he's taken an interest in this, this weird peasant who tried to kill all the Dons when they showed up at the mine. And he's like, all right, Alejandro, I want you to come talk to me. And of course, to be a complete creep, Captain Love's sitting at the desk, Alejandro's sitting at the desk, and they're like, all right, they're chatting or whatever. Alejandro's just kind of trying to maintain his composure, not be emotional. That's one of the things he's learned, is to not, fight with emotion or not kind of lead with emotion. But Captain Love basically brings up a big jar, like a big jug of water, basically, and with his brother's head in it. And it's like, what the? And then he brings out like another smaller jar with Fast Jack's like three-fingered hand in it. And he's like drinking out of it like a creep. And then Alejandro plays it off like, he's like, yeah, dude, you're kind of a psycho, like whatever. And Captain Love was like kind of hoping that would break him, so he would kind of out himself as the new Zorro, this new kind of vigilante, resurrected, who's been terrorizing the barracks and different things. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get him. But Alejandro plays it cool, even takes a bit of like water or whatever from his brother's severed head water jar, which is a weird sentence I never thought I'd say, drinks it, walks out. They could have ended it there, but they shoot like this great reaction shot of Antonio Banderas. I keep doing this. And he's so angry, he like takes like the horsewhip or whatever, and he like breaks it across his leg, or he kind of hits himself. He's like, oh, it's so frustrating, because he wants so desperately to kill Captain Love. He's like, I want it so bad. And the guy's like taunting him. But he's learned from Diego, you got to just take your time, be patient like I've been patient, and he was going to come to you eventually. Ooh, so good. I love it. It's just you got to be patient. I can teach you, but it's going to take time. You got to be patient. So great. I love it. Now, that's kind of the story, which I've kind of rambled through really quickly, and I'm sorry if it's like, Jimmy, you're going too fast, but I just get so excited about this. So again, basically, multiple revenge stories against super evil, kind of almost irredeemable bad guys. That's all you got to know. Now, what makes this movie even more spectacular? The sword fighting. Oh my gosh, the sword fighting. So Bob Anderson, people might know this guy. I'm pretty sure it's Bob Anderson. The guy who, like, I don't know, was in the Darth Vader costume. I think he even trained Viggo Mortensen, maybe. This guy said that Antonio Banderas, one of the most gifted swordsmen he's ever worked with, And Antonio Banderas actually trained with like the Spanish Olympic fencing team or something for like 4 months before this. He's so good. And one of the greatest things about him is that he remembers to keep the character of Alejandro alive in Zorro, in that his first time he takes a stance up against Diego, Anthony Hopkins, he kind of gets in this position. He puts his hand out like this and the sword's like this. And even at the end of the movie, when he's like full on, you know, got the mask, got the hat, got everything, he still takes that stance up. And the sword fighting is so good. It's like, it reminds me a little bit of one of the reasons I love the prequel lightsaber fights, because it feels like at any second someone could die, because they're all just so talented. Even Don Rafael, who's 20 years, you know, past his prime, same with Diego de la Vega, they're 20 years past their prime, they're still fighting. And it might not be them all the time, but for the most part, it looks like them. They've cut it just perfectly. And these kind of wide shots, or these kind of lingering shots, or they're just kind of, you know, steady, constant takes of them sword fighting is so good. It's so much fun. It's so compelling. A little like kind of what I would think to eventually inspire Pirates of the Caribbean, to have these sword fights that are real. They feel real. Like you just, because like, you know, especially when Zorro, who later on, he might have to kill a guy or two, but he usually kind of will kind of block and he'll punch you. Like Alejandro's not interested in killing a ton of people, but when you do get those kill shots, especially again, like later on here with Captain Love, you feel it. You're like, yes, like you finally get him and you're like, oh, got him. But there's some brutality, because like between Rafael and Diego, in the very kind of early on in that fight, when Don Rafael approaches and confronts Diego in his home to basically, he's like, you're Zorro, I know it, I'm going to kill you. They have a fight, and there's like, you know, one of them gets stabbed, one of them gets kind of wounded. There's quick, like kind of stabs and slashes. And it's so nice. It's just, it feels so tangible and it's so enjoyable. And again, 20 years later, it holds up because it was real, or at least they did such a good job to make it feel real that it holds up. And I love it so much each time I've seen these. And I watched this movie again, like twice within a couple of weeks. It's still like, it's so captivating. It's super good. There's obviously the kind of more risque fight between Alejandro and Elena later on, where they kind of are slashing at each other's clothing and stuff. And that one's kind of a fun fight. But the thing about that fight, any fight with any of these characters, they do a good job of reinforcing who that character is in their swordplay. So, for example, Elena, she's had the proper instruction for however long since she was a little kid. But while she has that, there's still like a passion to her, and she fights kind of wildly sometimes. Then you have Captain Love, who is constantly on the attack. Like, he's like, I'm going to kill you. Like, it's like he's got some refinement, but he's just like, I'm going to stab and murder you. Like, that's all he wants to do. And then later on, you get Alejandro, who likes to kind of toy with people, especially as Zorro, and he doesn't let his anger, again, he doesn't lead with it, he doesn't let it get to him. He toys with Captain Love. Like, he's talking to him throughout the whole fight. He's just kind of like, ha, ha, ha. Like, that's just who he is. He's learned, he's gotten to a skill point high enough above everybody else, it seems like, where it doesn't matter who's going to fight him, because he's just going to be like, yeah, you're not really a problem for me. Not anymore. And his trajectory, too, or trajectory, I should say, from when he starts off as kind of a thief or a street rat sort of situation, using that from Aladdin, and learns and kind of works his way up, and he kind of does his first night out with his kind of patched together Zorro costume, very reminiscent, like you see that in Spider-Man later on, like the Raimi trilogy, just kind of like, oh, you know, your hero journey, you got to go out there, do your one night kind of figuring it all out, you know, make some waves. And that's just a kind of a funny scene, but that night, and then you get the next time when he goes back in to steal the map to find out where that mine is that Don Rafael has. He's got two like really, really long nights that are like multiple fight scenes in this hacienda, or like at the barracks. And it's just so cool. It's so cool to see him like get better over time, even though he still makes mistakes from time to time. Now, Antonio Banderas apparently did most all of his stunts here. The only one that I could find that people reported on him not doing was the stunt where later on they're doing a horse chase at the end of that long night where he steals the map to the mine. And he's riding two horses. He kind of fights his way through multiple guys with horses, because Tornado inadvertently knocked him off at one point. And all the bumbling kind of soldiers are chasing Tornado, and they can't see that Zorro's not on it, but he's jumped onto another horse and he's working his way up. But there's a moment where he's standing on two horses near the end, and he jumps over like a downed branch or like a log type of thing, and the bumbling like lead soldier just just kind of crushes himself on it. Apparently he didn't do that stunt, which I totally understand. Apparently someone did though, and it looks great. Like, it all seems so legit and real. And apparently, too, they built a lot of that set that is the mine at the end. A lot of people apparently mistook it for CGI and stuff. But the explosions and stuff, I think a lot of that was real, too, or they did such a great job. And one thing you have to know about this movie, if there's fire, if there's like a cool moment, it'll be either punctuated by like a jaguar kind of like growl thing, or like this little flute trill. It's very like beginning of Jurassic Park. It's just like a little bit of corny. It's not overly corny, but it's just a little bit. And it's just, I love it. I really enjoy it. I could go on and on about this movie. I love that the romance is intertwined with the seriousness and the comedy. It's like there's all these layers, but all these characters have motivations, and they all intertwine, and they do callbacks. The writing is super good. I think the acting, for the most part, is just spot on. You really feel like this thing came together. And apparently, a long time ago, even though he ended up being an executive producer, Steven Spielberg was going to direct this movie, but it came into conflicts with scheduling, with Saving Private Ryan, potentially, and maybe Tom Cruise was going to star in it, maybe Shakira was going to play Elena. Wholly different movie right there. I can tell you that much right now. But, man, I really enjoy it. And I was kind of thinking about this while I was watching it. Antonio Banderas, a little bit more so, kind of, but with the other main players of the cast, not necessarily great representations of like Mexican actors and Spanish actors and stuff. So I could see where maybe that portion of the movie, if it was made today, would be chastised a little bit. But they give such great performances that I'm not saying you can just kind of totally forgive it. I just think that at the time you kind of get those people in, especially with Anthony Hopkins, who wasn't sure he was going to do it. Apparently Sean Connery was maybe going to do it for a bit, but Anthony Hopkins had a back injury, had a laser surgery, and then got back into it. And he was like, yeah, we could do this. But I'm happy with the way it shook out. I think the main cast of 5 right there they're just, I don't know how I change them. And I love just watching that revenge story, especially with Diego, getting those moments where he's just kind of driving his sword into Raphael's neck. And, he makes the little Z in the beginning of the movie, and we get a call back to that later on with Alejandro making an M on Captain Love's face. But it's just so good, because like in that world, if you had a sword at your neck or whatever, and not everyone was packing, machine guns and stuff, like that was a scary thing. It's like, oh my gosh, like he's going to kill him. It's so good. And I don't know. I'm trying to think about things I don't like about this movie, because usually with like things I talk about, I try to kind of keep a level head. And again, I saw this when I was probably too young to see it. I probably saw it when I was like 9 or 10, and it's PG-13. But it gets a little risque at times. But for the most part, it's just pretty straightforward. I just love a good revenge movie, and the fact that you get both of these main characters to seek their revenge and they personally carry it out it's even better. You're like, oh, it's just so gratifying when Captain Love just gets run through, and the music plays. And there's this moment before that fight where apparently it took like 3 takes to do it, and this is what Antonio Banderas wanted, but he pulls out the sword of Zorro and he kind of shines it in the sunlight. They got it with like the natural lighting, and it looks so great. And it kind of like plays into the image of Zorro, and the beginning of this movie, the end of this movie kind of are almost like Batman Forever, whichever one that is, where it's a big spotlight behind just someone who's probably Zorro, walks out and he kind of slashes the Z's. It has nothing, it's not contextual with the movie. It's just like, this is a Zorro movie and he's the main character, and this is kind of like, he's going to be at the beginning, he's going to be at the end. That's just how it is. Like, lifting up your character in a way like that. I love it. You don't see it like, you don't have Captain America come out in the beginning of a Captain America movie and, kind of just pose, and then at the end of the movie just like throw his shield one more time, and that's not usually how those movies typically end anyway. It'd be kind of cool if they did, though. Maybe the first one does at the very end, but not the beginning. Anywho, Zorro, such a cool character, and was a much bigger hit, television-wise way back in the day, and that's tied into Walt Disney and stuff like that, and again, inspired Batman. So a neat character, and The Mask of Zorro, so good. I have not seen The Legend of Zorro maybe since I saw it in theaters, which is a long time ago. Maybe I have to go back and watch it. Unfortunately, Anthony Hopkins not in that one because he does pass away in this movie because he gets mortally wounded. But he does finally get he gets Don Raphael too. It's just like they didn't need to make a sequel, but they did. So and Antonio Banderas. Again, him and Anthony kind of like play for that, like, who's this movie really about? But they're both so good, and they both carry it so well. But there's that supporting cast too. Everybody's great in this movie. I really, even the smaller characters, or the more minor roles, they're all just like really spot on. Like the priest, who's just like, the priest is great, and it's cool because you see the priest like early in the movie, he's helping Zorro. In the middle point of the movie, he's helping the new Zorro, and then you find out that he gets taken to the mine because he helps Zorro. Like, it's just, there's like these little things throughout. It's like this world feels alive. And then also you have Elena's like old nanny who shows up, and there's like, she is throughout that whole movie too. Like, there's these minor characters who've been there for years, for decades, and they're still there, which makes it feel like a real thing, a lot more real and tangible. It's genuinely good. The Mask of Zorro. Please go check it out. I don't know if it's one of my favorite films of all time. It's probably in my top 20. Man, it's just, I love it. I love a good revenge story, man. I do, and a good hero origin that isn't like, and it's not trying, like a lot of times in these superhero origins, they have to like, oh, this is how my super ability works, and I have to try it out a few times, and it's kind of comical. They have that, but it's more like, oh, I got a new tornado, this new horse, and it's not really listening to me, and I might hurt myself because I'm still learning how to, work with tornado. It's so good. Anyway, please go watch The Mask of Zorro, and like I said, there should be a commentary out, so if you've watched it in the past and you want to watch it along with me, you totally can. So it's either out by the time this comes out, or more likely, it'll be out after this, and then you can watch it. But just watch it if you've never seen it before. It's on Netflix. But it's definitely worth a rent somewhere because it's very well done. And for people who are interested in this sort of thing, and I usually am too, it was on a budget of about $95 million, and now this is back in 1998. Apparently, domestically, which is kind of the North America and stuff, about $94 million. Internationally, $156 million. Worldwide, about $250 million. So by today's standards, that would still be a success. It wouldn't be like the most crazy success because we kind of consider marketing to kind of double that price. So we're looking at $190 million that they would have to surpass, which they totally did. And that's probably why they made The Legend of Zorro eventually. But yeah, still this movie, it's just one of those classic action adventures. Nothing super insane about it besides the fact that they really tried to make this a good, genuine story with real action, real, like on-set location, and some just wonderful acting direction. Like there's a dance sequence in it that is like really good too. Like it's great. You should really check it out. Let me know if you go watch The Mask of Zorro, because you will not be disappointed. I really don't think you will. Even if it's your first time watching it, there's something for everybody in this one. And that's one of the reasons probably why my parents let me watch sort of this thing back when I was probably too young to watch it a little bit. They're probably like, it's not that bad. It's not like overly violent or overly sexual or anything like that. There's that one scene, though. Yeah. Oh, I guess the beheading thing. I guess that's kind of messed up. But I don't know. I was like, it really gets the point across. Zorro pun. Pun intended. Yes, of course. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there you go. Mask of Zorro. Again, I could go on and on about it, but I won't. I'll spare everybody. And now it's time to move into that segment of the show where I talk about the movies I've been watching, the TV shows I've been viewing, the video games I've been playing. It's time for Time Killers. That's right. Oh my gosh. So today on Time Killers, I've been playing Gears on stream and Final Fantasy VIII. Final Fantasy VIII, we're on disc 4. We're finally wrapping that up. It's been highs and lows. Today was a rough stream. I'll say that. There's, insofar as there was an enemy type or one of the like mini bosses that was just very challenging and annoying to overcome. And that game, I like it sometimes, but man, it is all over the place as far as like it's just, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, it's not a very consistent theme. It's like, hey, you're gonna go invade a castle, but a few hours ago you were up in space, and it's like, please pick something. But it's experimental. All Final Fantasies are experimental. But Gears, I've been enjoying going back through that. I will say this, I was playing on hardcore, because in the original Gears, at the beginning, you have casual, hardcore, and insane. They don't have a normal mode, I guess, on that. But I switched it from hardcore to casual just because I was going down so frequently and your AI companions cannot pick you up. And I thought it was really wasting a lot of time, mine and the viewers. So I was like, all right, I'm just switch back to casual. And there's a lot of things that I love going forward in Gears of War, insofar as, like, if I'm behind cover, how I can interact with someone on the other side of cover. I could jump over and knock them back and attack them, or in the more recent games, like, you can grab them, pull them over, and then, like, stab them. But right now, it's just kind of like you sit there and you pop up and just kind of drop down. And if they rush you, they can drop you, and because if I'm not playing co-op, which I'm not, no one can revive me. And so it sucks, so especially when your AI companion seems to, Dom, Santiago, for the most part, who you have, he seems to drop all the time. He falls down all the time. And it's like, it's just frustrating, because in later games, they can pick you up, and there's kind of a death timer for them, though, too. In this one, they can just be laying down in that down state for almost ever, it seems like. So you have to, like, be like, oh, I'm going to go get them. But then you're like, how effective are they being? It's a little bit frustrating. So I'm excited to beat Gears. We're almost done with that, and get into Gears 2. I've also been playing Gears of War Tactics, or just Gears Tactics. That's been great. Again, it's a bit different than XCOM. A lot of people kind of draw that comparison because they came out with a new XCOM Chimera Squad really recently. This one, it's not as intense, which I kind of enjoy. And it seems to be, you can be proactive about fights or reactive depending on how you use your Overwatch, which plays a little bit more in line with how Gears of War works, which is basically the ability to say, like, all right, each character's got 3 action points, and you can use that to shoot, use an ability, to move, to reload, all that stuff. Or, if you have enough in your clip, you can use those 3 action points and put yourself on Overwatch in a specific cone, like kind of you paint out like a little blue cone, depending on which weapon you have. If you have a sniper rifle, it's like a really long, thin cone. If you have a shotgun, it's like a super wide, like short cone. And any enemy that kind of gets in there has a chance of being shot if they try to run through it. And that's a little bit more in line with how, like, Gears of War kind of works. And it allows you to fight much greater amounts of foes, as opposed to fighting like 5 or 6 like really tough guys. Like, more often than not, you're going to be fighting waves of enemies, or bigger groups of enemies, where they'll drop in like 6 or 7 guys, and they'll vary from, the tiny little tickers that are like running explosives, or the wretches that are really small and they have to get close to you to finally attack you, up to the Therons and the Cantus, or the Canti, and like the boomers, the guys that like the big kind of blow you up. So it varies a lot, and I appreciate that. I really hope they have a DLC or something where you can actually play as the Locust, because I always find that to be interesting. I don't know if it'd be like a little mini campaign where you have 1 Cantus and 1 Theron and 1 Boomer and 1 Grenadier, and you level them up, or if you just get to summon a bunch and you have to just take down the cog. But the game I think I'm playing like the normal difficulty, is pretty forgiving if sometimes when it looks like they're about to like kill somebody. But there's been one side mission. It was so hard to do. Oh my gosh, I barely got my guys out of there. So there's been a few nail-biting moments for sure. So it's not a complete cakewalk by any stretch. It's just, it's been really fun, and I'm excited to kind of wrap that up, because I've gotten through Acts 1 and 2. I'm pretty deep in Act 3. One other complaint I've heard, and I'm starting to feel it too, is unfortunately the story you'll do like a story mission, you do like 1-2 story missions, and then they'll make you do 2 side missions. And then you do like maybe 1 story mission, and they're like, all right, now you have to do 3 side missions. And unfortunately, they're not like optional. You get to pick from like a list of like 4. And they'll be like, all right, here's the rewards. And also here's the optional objectives in them. So you can get more like of your loot boxes to unlock them, and, randomly get different things you can equip to your gears, armor, gun mods and stuff. But it can be a little frustrating when you want to just move forward with the story, and then you're playing the same side missions again and again, where it's like, all right, save these gears. You can only have 1 character go out at a time. He has to go save these 2 gears, or you have to go hold these 2 points for a certain amount of time while you collect supplies. I just wish there's a little more variety if they're going to force you to do the side missions as frequently as they do, as opposed to other games like Valkyria Chronicles, where I think they have like skirmish battles where you can go do those things, but that's completely optional. You don't have to do that. I don't think I ever did that. So yeah, it could be a little more streamlined in that functionality. As far as watching has been going, I've started I started watching One Piece again, which is nuts to me because I was watching that like 10 years ago back in college. I got through like the Skypiea arc, for those who understand what that is. And for people who don't know One Piece, it's a really incredibly popular anime that focuses on Monkey D. Luffy and his crew, and they're all pirates, and they're just kind of exploring the world trying to find One Piece, which is a special treasure left by a very famous pirate named Gold D. Roger. And if you find that, you become king of the pirates. And Luffy, he wants to be king of the pirates, and he ate this thing called gum gum fruit. And there's these kind of things called devil fruits sprinkled throughout this world. And if you eat these, you get a special power. I think you can only have the one. You can only eat one gum gum fruit. But the trade-off is that you, like, if you're ever in the ocean, you can't swim. So it's like kind of the trade-off for pirates, where it's like, all right, you want to be like a pirate, you go sail around the world with your superpowers, that's great. But if you ever get in the water, you're going to die. So it's kind of that story. But I was watching the Marineford arc, which is it's like in the 450s or 460s as far as episodes go, and watching that big crazy battle. And that's right before there's apparently like a time skip, like a 2-year time jump, very similar to Naruto and Naruto Shippuden for people who watch the anime. And I'm interested to see what comes after that, because as much as I like One Piece, and it's like a warm blanket to come back to, my biggest issue usually was with the fact that so many of the characters are just, it's just so weird. Like it's harder to digest sometimes, because you, like, the most powerful character for an arc might be somebody who just has like the weirdest character design and is so strange and is like, ugh, like it's really off-putting. But that's where I think something like My Hero Academia kind of straddles that line or walks that wire a lot better, where they have like, oh yeah, so the police chief is like a dog-headed man, but they don't go into it more. Or there's one of the guys on our team, he's got like a big raven head, but nobody talks about it. And it's like, it's fine, it's not a big deal. But I really appreciate that, which I feel like I need to look up his name quick, because if I don't, I'm going to get, people are going to be like, you didn't say his name, and I'm going to say his name. Shadow guy. Nailed it. Oh yeah, Tokuyami. Thank you. Fumikage Tokuyami. See, Kage, Shadow. That guy's great. Watch My Hero Academia, which I was kind of watching some older ones too. I'm kind of waiting for the dub to catch up on Funimation. But yeah, One Piece. One Piece has been really good though. And I've caught myself watching a lot of episodes. Unfortunately too, they're only like 15 to 18 minute long episodes, because the new, like, the strategy, especially for these bigger shonen jump like shows, is that they'll do the first like 5 or 6 minutes are the title song, the opening song, and then like a huge recap, and you're just like, okay. So it's nice to watch them in rapid succession, so you can just kind of get to the next one, get to the next one, get to the next one. But yeah, I've been watching that, and that is pretty much it as far as Time Killers is concerned. Now it's time to move into my personal favorite segment of the show. There we go. I could do this. Community feedback and questions. Yes. Oh my gosh. And you guys sent in some great questions this week, and I do appreciate it. Here we go. Let's get them up here. Oh yeah. This one comes in from my good buddy, Zorro Caviar, Caden. This is great because it ties into what we're talking about today. He says on Twitter, when did you first realize you were attracted to Antonio Banderas? That's the first question. Easy. First second I saw him. No, he's very attractive guy. And there's a lot of eye candy in The Mask of Zorro. Antonio Banderas is obviously part of that. Have I seen The 13th Warrior? I have not seen The 13th Warrior. And he says, was Armand the hottest vampire in Interview with the Vampire, the movie? I looked that up today, and I have not seen that movie either, and I've heard stuff about that, because it's like Tom Cruise, my boy. I still need to see that movie. But yeah, from what I saw, that little clip between him and Brad Pitt, I'm like, yeah, sure, for sure. And then he asks, finally, if you could recast Antonio as a character in any movie, who would it be? Easy, Aragorn. No, that would be a very different thing. Antonio Banderas, if I could recast him as any character in any movie, oh, that's a great question. That's a super good question. I was thinking somewhere like in Pirates of the Caribbean, he would have been super good. And knowing my luck, he showed up somewhere briefly in those. But I think Johnny Depp does a great Captain Jack. That's so hard. That's a hard question. I don't know. Who would you recast? I'd love to see him in some big superhero thing, though. I think he's a really talented actor. He's one of my favorite things about, I think it's, oh my gosh, what's the name of that? Not The Untouchables. The Expendables. The Expendables 3, he's in it, and he's great. One of the highlights of that movie. Yeah, I don't know. I just think there just needs to be more Antonio Banderas in movies, which he's done a ton of work. He really has. You know, he'd be a really interesting James Bond. And I know that he's not British, but it would be kind of fun to have him be some sort of gentleman spy. I'm sure he's been a spy in things, but that's what I would like to see. There we go. I've done it. All right, and this one comes in from Jalen Brown over on Discord. Thank you, Jalen. Appreciate you, Jalen. Thank you, thank you. All right. This is completely changing gears here, which is good. He asks, what do you think about E3? Do you have any favorite years that come to mind? These past few years, the show has started to lose a lot of its hype because more and more companies just host their own show and stream it themselves, saving the hassle of going through E3, saving money, having full control of what they want to do, etc. With EA hosting their own show for these past few years, Sony not being at the show last year, and with all of E3 being canceled because of the pandemic this year, do you think we've seen the last of E3? And he sent in his own personal, because I want you to send in your feedback as well, because it's community feedback, and questions. He says, IMO, we'll see what happens with this Summer of Games event IGN is doing this summer in place of E3. Or is that the Jeff Keighley thing? But regardless, I don't think we've seen the last of the show just yet. But I do think between this summer and next summer, game companies are going to get hosting their own shows down to a science, and they'll all end up leaving E3. So I'd give E3 until 2021 before it's no longer needed. If you read all of this, God bless you. Nah, Jalen. Of course I'm going to read all of it. I love it. This is great. So, first question. Let's address the first one here. Settle in. What do I think about E3? I love the idea of E3, and I have been one of those guys that when I can feel it here, right in the old ticker, right in the old chest. When I think about E3, I think about coming home, from college or whatever, and just like after just a year of just working and stuff, and kind of it's so much, and then just turn on the TV, turn on G4 or whatever is going to be on for E3, and just watching all that coverage, and I loved it so much. And I wasn't really into the press conferences for a while, because the first press conference I think I ever saw was the Microsoft one where they did the whole Halo orchestra, and I had my friend Ryan over at my house. We were like watching it back in high school or whatever, and we're like, why are they doing this? Like, it was cool, but it's kind of weird. But I love the idea of E3, and I have not been to E3. I would like to go, but I've been to PAX West, and I've heard that PAX nowadays has kind of become like a chiller version of E3. I think it's a cool thing, and I like having this tangible moment where we can all come together and love games or talk about games and kind of like get that moving. And one of my favorite things about the coverage from E3 in the past was just finding a game I'd never heard about. They don't show in the press conferences, and it's like on the show floor, and they one of the various websites is has somebody come over and they're like talking about a game that I've never seen, and there's just live gameplay of it. There's something so cool about that. And I really love that. And I understand that it does take a lot of time and money and effort to make E3 possible. And for many of these companies, they might be seeing diminishing returns. But I still wish we had this big annual thing each year like that. And a lot of people talk about E3 being like Christmas for gamers and or Christmas for game enthusiasts. I still don't like the term gamer. I understand why people use it, but I'm like, it just sounds weird. I guess it's because you're interacting with it and you play a game, but like when I watch a movie, they don't call me like a movie like I'm a watcher. I'm a movier. I'm not that. Anyway, but I really enjoy E3, and it's fun to talk about how it kind of morphs each year, and how what's a good conference, what's a bad conference, and all that stuff. And I just think going to that would be really cool. And I know there's been kind of pushback because it's become more of a fan event, or there's been this kind of muddying of the waters, or kind of, or I should say, it's more of like a gray area where you have people, influencers, who have become so popular than some like websites and stuff, where they are considered press and they get to be there. And there's so many people who are like, oh, like, you know, it should be press only these days, and those other people these other days, and fans could only come for this day or whatever. I understand there's a lot of logistics to be concerned with here, but I still wish that there could be a way to do it. I wish there could be a way to do it where it's like a week or two, and it was just like all the big announcements. And the fun thing too is that each kind of company still, you can get your moment like we've seen with other groups other ways, but I still think it's so nice to have like one day for like an hour or two to have all eyes on you and everybody's looking there. It's kind of like we're all little baby eyes of Sauron, and there's always like, oh, there's always things to look at, all the things. But E3 is like it's Aragorn at the Black Gate. We're all like, okay, like show us what you got. And I think that's so interesting. I really like it. And just, man, conferences are so weird and cool and bizarre and cringy, and I enjoy it because you just never know what's coming around the river bend, you know? It's like Pocahontas said. It's exciting because you're just like, oh, it goes dark and your mind starts to explode because you're like, it could be anything. And then when they show something that you're not really interested in, you're like, that's okay. But sometimes they show something crazy and you're like, like you just lose it. Like when the first time I saw Devil May Cry 5, my brain did not know how to handle it. The animation of it looked weird and different than what I was used to, so I was like, oh no. But then I was like, it was Devil May Cry 5, so I was like, so it was a lot of like emotions, consternation. So anyway, what do I think of E3? I really enjoy it. I understand some people's like hesitation, not want to do it, especially the game companies, but I think it should be around. And I think I wish there were a way to make it so more fans and more like small time people such as myself could get to go there and not be a burden to people. Like, there's a lot of people who are like, I just need to do my job, everybody get out of my way. Well, it's like for a lot of these people who are influencers, the only reason or media is because you have an audience, and that audience is making the trip to go out there. So I just try to be cognizant of the people who got you to where you are. That's what I'm saying. But it would be cool. My dream is like 2 weeks of E3, a week for the press and a week for the fans, or just everybody else, or maybe it's like a week and a half for the press and 4 or 5 days for the fans, or whatever it would be. I just think that'd be super cool. Would that be a lot? Oh yeah, but it'd be amazing. It'd be so cool. That'd be great. But yeah, do I have any favorite years that come to mind? I don't know if I have any favorite years that come to mind. I think for me, it's gotten better in some respects over the years because I've been I don't really do reaction streams a lot, but I usually do it for E3, and that has always been fun for me to do, to hang out with you guys and in the chat. So it's kind of a schmoozy answer, but it's the truth. I really love watching E3 with you guys. And some people, it's fun because you get people right away who see a thing and you get both reactions. One person's like, couldn't care less. And then there's other people who are just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But usually for the most part, we kind of come together. It's like, oh, we're spending 20 minutes on FIFA, or however long it feels like, and you're like, oh my gosh, or just like getting just kind of bummed out because it's another year they're going to show Star Wars stuff, but it's just people sitting at a desk and you're like, no, show me a game. So there's that kind of the crestfallen, just like, but you feel something, and I just really enjoy that. Yeah, it's just so cool. It's great. Let's see, what was the last question? Did I get all of it? With all E3 being canceled because of the pandemic this year, do you think we've seen the last of E3? I don't know. I hope not. I like E3 a lot, but I understand if people don't want to do it anymore. And it's kind of unfortunate because this year you have somebody like Jeff Keighley, who's kind of a big part of that, who before all this happened, he was like, I'm out. And then Sony was like, I'm out. And then they canceled it all anyway. So it just kind of seems like there was definitely a vibe in the air that some groups did not want to be part of it anymore. And I don't know all the kind of the work that goes into it. I don't know if it's a good thing for gaming companies. I don't know if there's like some shady things going on, or if there isn't, or if there's problems in and amongst that committee or whoever puts on E3 each year. But I don't know if we've seen the last of it. I think if this would have been at a different timing with all the stuff going on in the world right now, and E3 were to come back, and there would have been a chance to do it still this year, I think people would have jumped at it. I think next year, though, we could be at a point where it's going to be a little more return to somewhat normalcy. And I could see people being really kind of aggressive about going there. And if that shifts, kind of doing like the jobs for people, like for the gaming companies and the press and everybody, if it's just easier to just put out stuff online, I think we'll see that. But also, I would love to kind of see E3 get changed into more of a fan event, like kind of Comic-Con-ish. Because when you're there, you're not going to be able to get as much information as you are when you're at home, which is kind of funny. But at the same time, there's still something about going there, making that pilgrimage and going to see those things. And I hope that there are companies like Microsoft who still see this as an opportunity with E3 kind of, maybe even if it's diminishing a little bit, but to say like, hey, you know what, if they just want to turn the E3 like into the Microsoft and Ubisoft and show, you know, like we'll do it. That sounds great. I would love that, because that would just be like, you know what? And that would kind of maybe force Sony to be like, all right, I guess we'll kind of come back and do what we want or do something. And yeah, Sony's had some kind of weird press conferences. They've all had weird press conferences over the years. But I think the telltale signs for them were kind of like, you're all in a room. It's the Last of Us church room. And then they're like, go in this other room and it's Ghost of Tsushima. And you're like, why are we moving like rooms? And there's like a panel in between this whole press conference. But I would love to see just it become more about the group of people who make these games and the people who love them, as opposed to being like such a big like press thing, you know? Because like you said, it's easier to control, you know, what your message is and put it out in like a little video on the internet on just a Tuesday, like whatever Tuesday you want, or a Thursday. You're just like, all right, yeah, guys, next week we got some, and you just kind of lead it a little, like a week or a couple of days, and there you go. But there's still something I think cool about being there. And again, that's just coming from my like minor experience being like PAX and my love, I guess, too, of like theme parks, kind of being in a space like that and being around like-minded people, I think is really fun. I hope it's not the last we've seen of E3. I could see where it's going to be very diminished, and it might, like I said, might need to shift into something different, you know, to kind of, you know, supplant and kind of change it up. And if E3 is really expensive to make, maybe they'll start doing things where, you know, they are doing it for longer periods of time, but they're allowing, like, they're trying to fill up like a certain number of people. Like, you get a ticket for E3, but you can only go there for a couple of days unless you buy like the unlimited pass, which is like expensive. I don't know how any of that works. All I'm saying is I don't want E3 to go away. I could see it shifting, and I could see it eventually going away, but I hope not. I hope not. Yeah, there's my answer. I think that's all the questions we have about that. Great question. And for you guys, all those questions that I asked before, please, I want to hear what you think about E3, about how attractive Antonio Banderas is, or when the moment you knew you were attracted to him. I mean, obviously, for most of us, it's like the first second you see him. It's that meme everybody sees where he's just like that. It's just that. But yeah, I appreciate you guys writing in. If you guys ever have a topic or a question or an idea for the show, never hesitate to write in. Just use the hashtag #CriticalPodcast. You can tweet it at our official account, which is @GoCritical, or you can tweet at me personally. I'm at JimmyGood013. Please do so. I think next week is going to be Return of the King, and then after that, the much anticipated, long overdue, I think I've asked people for questions before, but please send them in again. I'm going to have my mom on the show. So we can talk about something specific, like a movie or, you know, something with her, or we could just do a completely general, broad topic. Let me know. I think it could be a heck of a lot of fun. I want to thank everybody who has been watching up until this point. I know it's just been me today. It's kind of like our Super Smash Brothers one, but seems like I was like, you know what, I'm gung-ho about Mask of Zorro, and I have not missed a week for many years, like 4 years, and I'm like, I'm not missing a week. So I'm just here. So I hope you guys can bear with just me, but usually we have a guest on the show too, so it's not just me yelling at the microphone for this amount of time, but I appreciate it. Let me know if you like this kind of format, if you're okay with it being just me. I want to know. I want to hear from you guys. And again, for those who didn't catch it last week, new wish list is out. It's focused on the Disney villains and theme parks. If you like either of those things, you'll enjoy that. If you don't like either of those things, you probably won't like it. That's not a cancel out sort of thing, okay? Like, but I would appreciate you guys checking it out, sharing it around. But thank you to our patrons who actually suggested doing a commentary on this film and kind of led into this week's podcast for this. So I appreciate all of you guys who are donating on Patreon and those who are subscribing to our Twitch channel and all that stuff too. You guys, I'll be honest with you, you don't need to do that, but I appreciate that you do. You know, I really do. It allows me to continue funding for the show and purchasing new games and stuff. Which a Final Fantasy VII Remake review is on its way. Just give me a little bit more time. It's coming. But it allows the train to keep going on the tracks, and I appreciate you guys. So thank you so much. I hope you guys are doing well. Please stay safe. If you ever need to chat, never hesitate to reach out. Just tweet at me, hit me up in Discord and all that stuff. And yeah, just know that you're not alone, okay? Love and hugs to all of you. And until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome.